With that said, I want to say thanks to everyone who did show up. We haven't had these monthly meetings in a bit, so I'm glad to see that this is we're getting back to this, and we're going to try and make this. I don't know about the right around the holidays, but come the new year, we're going to make this the normal thing again. With that said, this is the Consequence of Habit virtual meeting. Our mission statement is to bring awareness to the impact that habits have on our mental health, success, and the environment. This week's host, or excuse me, this month's host is Denis Faye. He's a nutrition communications consultant. I'm going to let you explain new personal best here in a minute, Denis, just because I want to do, I feel like I might do it a disservice, but he's been on the medical review board of Eat This, Not That, vice president of nutrition at Beachbody, and he's been a contributor. He's been a contributor to publications including the New York Times, Outside Magazine, Wired, Men's Health, and many more. With that said, Denis, I'm going to let you take it. Thanks for doing this.
All right, thanks, JT. Hey everybody, super happy to be here. This is fun, and I really like the Consequence of Habit cause and what you guys are doing. So it's really an honor. Well, I mean, if you want me to talk about me a little bit, yeah, journalist and avid endurance athlete. I know there's a couple people on this call who have run further than I have. I'll let my ego get in the way and say, although I bet I've cycled further than they have, but you know, we're all friends here. And yeah, I do have so I'm a consultant, so I help various businesses who want to speak with athletes in their messaging, and yeah. And I also have my own new personal best. It's a Substack, and the URL will show up at the end of the presentation. But my goal, I noticed that there's a gap. You know, it's really easy to find lots of content about, you know, how to lose weight or how to run your first 5K. And then there's lots of content that treats everybody like they're about to do 3 Tour de France's in a row. But there's a middle ground of athletic inspired people who want to be athletes without tons of math and all that. And so that's who I'm trying to speak to. Admittedly, sometimes I go down the rabbit hole of science a bit too much, but and I do know some people like that. I think Todd is on the call, and Todd is a much like myself, a big nerd, and we nerd out on all the science, but also just my goal is to help anyone who wants to be active, and use food to do that. So I guess I should jump into my presentation. Do you guys want that, or do you want some pre-questions? How would you like to do this? Oh, Craig. Hi, Craig. Hey, how's it going, man? Okay, I guess I'll just jump in. Does it sound good?
Yeah, that sounds good.
All right. Okay, here you go. I'm going to share my screen.
Share away.
Yeah, share. And I'm going to, all right. Tonight's topic is 5 habits every endurance athlete should embrace. I can't see all of you on the call. But if you have a question or you want to pause or something, just kind of put your hand up. Maybe JT, if you see someone asking a question, let me know too, and I'll pause. And then I'll kind of bounce through this, and then we can all talk afterwards. Yeah. So again, to preface here, there will be some numbers showing up, but honestly, you can take people are not calculators. And a huge part of sports nutrition is learning how your body personally works. And there can be a study showing, you know, that the big example for me is keto. By all science, keto doesn't really make sense in terms of, I mean, it does for some people, but for like hard efforts, there's a lack of logic in it. And yet, I know people who prosper doing it. They do it. It works for them. They get stronger. They get faster. So I believe that you take some kind of, when you're learning how to eat, you start with some basics and you experiment and you find your own way. And the more dogmatic and demanding a system is, the less I'm inclined to buy into it. So that's my personal philosophy. And anyone disagrees with me, I'd love to talk to you about it. So please disagree with me. But that's what I'm going to try to do here. So I'm going to start with protein. There's a lot of different protein strategies, and frankly, in the American diet, people have all the protein they need. What they don't do is do it strategically. Just because you have a big brontosaurus burger for dinner doesn't mean you nailed all your protein needs, because protein doesn't function the way carbs or fat do. You don't really store protein. Each time you eat it, it'll do one of two things. It will be used as protein to help build muscle and do proteiny things. And if you eat too much of it, it just gets converted to energy. So glucose or fat or something like that. And as an endurance athlete, you are beating your body down. It's what you do. It's what we do. And so it's important that at all points during the day, you have this continual feed of protein, so that you can, whenever your body goes anabolic, which means, okay, you have two ways of being. You have catabolic, where you're like eating up your body or burning things up, breaking things down, and anabolic, where you're building things up. And so whenever you're in one of these anabolic phases, you want to have these amino acids. That's what protein's made out of. Amino acids, building blocks to have on hand to work. The best way to do that, in my opinion, is, and not my opinion, is 20 to 30 gram meals, and 20 to 30 gram. So you have 4 to 5 times a day, you have a meal or a snack, and each time you try to get 20 to 30 grams of protein in there. That, if you do that, you're probably going to get all that you need. Now, what does that look like? Here are some examples of what 30 grams of protein looks like. You have 4.5 ounces of meat, like the palm, 1.8 cups of Greek yogurt, 2.5 cups of beans, 1.5 cups of tofu. But also remember that lots of foods have protein in them, so you don't just need to have your little piece of protein and that's all you're getting. A lot of vegetables and grains, particularly seeds and nuts, these things all have some protein in them, so they're all working together. So don't get too married on having to make sure that you have that 4.5 ounces of meat. Understanding that if you have broccoli and quinoa or barley with it, you're also getting some more protein. So do we want to stop at each point and talk, or should I just go through all 5? How should we do that?
I say you just start going through it, and then if somebody has a question, they just go ahead and raise their hand, and we can stop it. But for the sake of time, I'd say just go through it, and then we've got somebody waving already.
Yeah. Okay, Chris.
Yeah, that was me. I was just since we're talking about protein, do you have an opinion on, like, is one protein better than other proteins? So what I'm getting at is, like, is meat protein going to be better for you than the protein that you're going to find in tofu?
Okay.
Is there
I have an answer for you. Okay. So I guess you got to look at it in 2 ways. In terms of an individual protein by itself, like a protein that lives on a desert island, like the Robinson Crusoe proteins, you can't argue with animal proteins. They're what's called complete, which means there's 9 essential meat. Okay, so protein is made out of amino acids that your body needs, I believe, 20 of them. Or no, it doesn't. Yeah, it needs 20 of them. It can make 11 of them. So there's 9 it cannot make, and those need to be in your foods. When you eat animal protein, including eggs and dairy and insects, by the way, I'm a big advocate of insect protein. Maybe we can talk about that later. But you get all of those amino acids in the levels you need, because they all coordinate. So you need certain levels of each. So the answer to that is yes. However, that's not a healthy diet. And a healthy diet is a range of foods, like a variety of foods all day long. And if you do that, if you don't even need animal protein anymore. If you have a variety of fruits and vegetables and grains, lots of legumes, pulses, and all that, you're going to hit all those amino acid numbers, and it will be perfectly healthy. And so then, it gets into there's other sides of, from a sustainability in the environment method. It's really hard to argue the plant-based eating isn't good. It's better, frankly. And then, there are some minor problems with animal protein, and, there's debates about saturated fats and all that kind of thing. Some people think there's no problem with saturated fats. Some people do. I look at both sides and I'm like, why take your chances? I don't really, both sides are very compelling about whether or not saturated fats are bad. I personally don't feel like risking it. So I'm a pescatarian. And then also the insects, but I'm a pescatarian. So because I was a vegetarian for many years, and just, again, the biochemical individuality, I found I didn't respond well to it. I added fish, problem solved, healthy as a horse. So does that answer your question?
Yeah, I appreciate all that. And I'm also a fan of insect proteins. I actually have protein bars upstairs that are made with cricket protein right here.
Oh, nice.
Chiang Mai.
The Exos ones?
No, they're called Pro bars.
Bars.
They're made here in Chiang Mai, so I support local as much as I can.
Nice. Wow, that's awesome. Yeah. If you want to nerd out, the FAO and I think WHO collaborated on a really massive document. You can find it online that advocates for insect proteins. It's a dense read. It's not really like, something you read to your kids at bedtime, but it's definitely worth having a look at. Cool. All right. So is that, you bet. Are we proteined?
Yeah, I think we're good to go. Oh, we got
all right.
Dominic's. Go ahead, Dominic.
Dominic, what's up?
I know nothing about insect protein. That came totally out of left field for me. Are there resources, or I want to learn more about that. I've never heard of that before. Are there resources or anything that you can share, or how did you get into that?
Honestly, I got into it because I was working on an article for a magazine about novel proteins, and it came up, and I did some investigating and interviewed some people and thought it was pretty fascinating stuff. If you look for it online, like I said, that FAO document, JT, is there a way I could send you a link to that and we could put it in the show notes? No, I can't hear you.
Absolutely. We can do that. And you can also, if you have it handy, well, you probably don't have it handy. I'll make sure everybody gets it. I'll make sure it's in the show notes. Okay.
I mean, I have it downloaded on my computer, but I don't have the link to.
Yeah. We'll get it after the fact.
All right, cool. So that's a cool thing to look at. I mean, real quick, what's really neat, right? Let me tell you how cricket protein is made, because it's rad. So what they're doing now is it's called vertical farming. Vertical farming is basically farming in a warehouse where you have stacks of things. They actually grow, like you can get lettuces vertically farmed and all that, but so you go in the warehouse and then you have these stacks of crickets, and they're farming the crickets in these warehouses, and it's super sustainable. You don't even really need water because crickets can absorb moisture from the grains they get fed. And these are like crappy grains that would just be going to feedlots or something. Anyway, I'm going down. That's a different topic. Sorry. Sometimes I get excited and it's hard for me to focus on one thing, but so they grow the crickets, and it's a 5-week phase. And then when the cricket's grown, that stack of grown crickets, they just turn down the temperature, and it gets colder and colder. And then the crickets fall asleep, and then they die. It's like, I don't know if you don't want crickets to suffer, but they don't suffer. They just fall asleep. And then they dehydrate them and they grind them up, and that's it. And the shells, the chitin of the cricket is actually, it's interesting because it's actually made of a carbohydrate and it's a prebiotic. So a prebiotic is really good. Prebiotic is a substance you eat that helps the healthy bacteria in your gut. So this stuff's really amazing. And the whole process for making crickets, the easiest thing to compare it to is coffee. You put it there, you roast it, you grind the whole thing up, and there's your coffee. It's the exact same thing. So it's really interesting. And I think that FAO document is worth checking out. Did I over answered that one, I think.
No, that's, I think, someone starts, they don't want to know a little bit about insect protein. We want to know how it's made. So I think that's fascinating.
All right, cool. Thank you. All right. Anyone else? All right, let's go next. Uh-oh. Yeah, okay. Number 2, drink more water than you think you need. I think personally that this is true even for normal people, but endurance athletes, you need an extraordinary amount of water. And the drink the first thirst thing has been disproven. There's a really big study where they took a bunch of cyclists, a bunch of trained athlete cyclists. So these people should know their body. And they had them ride for like 6 hours. And then they, some of them, they monitored the water. So some of them were not dehydrated by the end and some were. And then all of them, they just kind of said, here, drink some water till you're rehydrated. And they all drank the same amount of water and said, oh, I'm hydrated now. The dehydrated ones were 6 hours. I mean, they were massively dehydrated, and all they had to do is drink a cup of water, and they could not perceive it. So your body lies to you in those situations. So you should drink more than you need. Now, what does that look like? It's tricky. I mean, there are numbers they can say. Again, I don't want to give you numbers because I don't know how long you exercise. I don't know your size. I don't know that your lean muscle, your muscle to fat ratio. I don't know the temperature. I don't know anything about you, what you're doing. So I can't give you that number. But what I can tell you, and you should learn by your body, is there's that P scale. It's called the Armstrong 8 level, I think, color scale. And that's legit. That's not a made up thing. You see the people go, oh, if it's dark P, you're dehydrated, blah, blah, blah. It is based on some relatively hard science. The only catch is that you need to do it first thing in the morning. That's when you test it. Because the rest of the day, you're hydrating, you're rehydrating, you're dehydrating, and you're fluctuating. So what comes out can be different things. But, in much the same way that you take your resting heart rate to see how your heart's doing first thing in the morning, that morning P is an indication of how hydrated you are. If it's pale yellow, you're in good shape. So I personally, Phil, you can't see me right now, but I'm holding up a 40-ounce hydro flask. And so I drink up in the morning, I have a glass of water. Sometimes I put some like citrulline in it or something, but I have a glass of water. And then at least I have 40 ounces of water. And then if I'm riding bikes or running, then there's more to it. And I'm good that way. But I just explored and found my way. So I'd encourage you to do the same. But just remember that thirst thing it's just silly. All right, so that was water. Do people have water questions before we move on? Yeah, everyone likes protein better than water. Water's boring. So, all right, here we go. Carbs. Eat enough carbs before long, hard efforts. If you want to kind of, if I had a dime for everyone said, oh, I try to keep carbs down, I'd have a lot of dimes. I'd be doing pretty well. And oh, wait, there's 2 people in the chat. Are people asking questions there? Oh, you guys are talking about the crickets.
Yeah, I think that's it's
Yeah.
all answered. Yep.
Exo protein is the one I like, and they taste really good too. They're a combination of cricket and pea protein, so I think that it balances the flavor well. But I really like Exo. Anyway, back to carbs. So, you're when you exercise hard, so your body has two. This is a very simple version of it. When you do easy exercise, your body is more prone to burn fat. When you go hard, especially into anaerobic, your body will move into burning your blood sugar and glycogen. Glycogen is basically blood sugar stored in your muscles and your liver, and there's a little bit in your brain. But so you want to oh, Ivan just joined us. I know Ivan's a good guy. Hi, Ivan. He can't see us yet, but Ivan's awesome. Anyway, so when you when you but you have this glycogen and this blood sugar, you have about, if you eat right, you have about 90 minutes worth of hard effort in you, maybe 2 hours. And then after that, when you run out of it, you do something called bonking. And I think a lot of endurance athletes, I see nods. I'm sure you've experienced that before, where you just feel like you hit a wall. And frankly, during those hard efforts, bonking is inevitable. When you're going hard, you can burn like you can burn like anywhere from, 400 to 600 is like a little bit hard. 800 is super hard. 1,000 is just nuts hard. And you can do that. And meanwhile, really like uber professional endurance athletes who are being fed by science in super specific ways, who have trained their body to absorb, can really only absorb 480 calories in an hour. 120 grams, and they just figured that out. And I assure you that no one on this call, myself included, is capable of that. We are more like 60 grams, which is 220 calories an hour. So bonking is an inevitability during long efforts. So it's important to get as much carbohydrate in you as possible beforehand to avoid that. And by the way, it's really bad for you to do that. It's bad for your immune system. Your brain doesn't work, so you increase your chances of injury. Like bonking happens, but don't, like fasted state training where you make yourself bonk, you're really putting yourself in a bad place. There's no benefit to that. Oh, I skipped ahead. So when you're training, like if the next day you're going to be going super hard for super long, just have a carby meal. I'm not going to give you exact numbers again. If you really want exact numbers, the American just the general recommendation is 6 to 12 grams per kilogram of body weight per day. I don't care about that. I just think that are you going to do that? Really? Are you going to sit there and, go to Olive Garden or wherever you're planning on carving up and get out the scale and measure stuff and ask for, you're not going to do that. So just have a reasonable carby dinner, like don't get sick and don't overeat, but just what feels right. And the next morning have toast or oatmeal is a really good one, or something like that. Don't get up and have eggs and bacon because there's no carbohydrates in that. And you should be good. That's about as good as you can get. If you're doing a race and you really want to take it seriously, the idea of carb loading kind of comes in and out of fashion, but it's the fancy term for it is glycogen supercompensation, and it's pretty established at this point. You should do that. And again, there's a lot of fancy science that you can do, but what I would recommend is 3 or 4 days before your event, just like I said, just have big carby meals. Don't overdo it. But if you have a desire for a carb, take it. By the way, you can do this in a very healthy whole foods fashion. I'm not telling everyone to eat pizza for 3 or 4 days. You can, that's on you. But you know, potatoes and whole grains and all those they're perfectly acceptable carbs. And on that note, for those of you who are weight conscious, carbohydrates, when they go into your muscles, when you build that glycogen, they come in with water. So what a lot of people do is they'll have a meal one night and they'll suddenly gain 5 pounds and they'll freak out and they think they got 5 pounds fatter. They did not. Two things happened. One is they fueled their muscles and they brought water into it. And also they probably had a bunch of sodium in there that caused it. You're not, if you're weight conscious, 3 to 4 days before an event, you're not going to ruin your diet. You're not going to lose your 6-pack abs. Just eat the food so that you can perform. So that's my advice. So I saw a couple of hands being raised.
Yeah, I think we're going to kick off. I think Jenna was first, and then it's on to Todd. So Jenna, you got it.
So most of my workouts tend to start between 5 and 5:30 in the morning.
Yep.
And I would literally get up at 4:30 in the morning to try and get some type of nutrition in me before the workout. But it makes me nauseous and it makes me sick to eat that early. Will carbing the night before be enough to hold over to the next day, the next morning, the workouts? Or do you suggest trying to get something in? And what would be the best bang for your buck if it's just so hard to eat at 4 o'clock in the morning?
This is where the "you're not a computer" thing comes in. I mean, I can tell you the perfect way to do it, but the perfect way to do it might not be your perfect way to do it, and that's okay. So personally, in that situation, because sometimes I wake up for some silly early workouts, just do a little something to top off the tanks. So have your big carb meal before, sleep, wake up, and eat like a banana or a piece of fruit you like. Is that something that you can tolerate?
Yeah, I'll try even just a spoonful of peanut butter or something before a workout.
Yeah, I mean, there's not really any carbohydrates, or there's very few carbohydrates in a spoon of peanut butter. So, I mean, if that
I'll stop doing that.
If that works for you, great. Maybe you could put that peanut butter on a piece of toast, and then suddenly you introduce carbs into the conversation. So yeah, I would just a little thing, like try to figure out what you can handle and go for it. But don't beat yourself up if it's not going to happen.
Great, thanks.
You bet. Todd. All right, Todd is like the king of the curveballs. I was at a party with him a couple of weeks back, and he walks up to me and he starts talking about God knows what, something about telomeres and metabolism. And I'm just like, dude, I just want to sit here to enjoy my party, but okay, let's talk about this. So
yeah, and of course I wanted to geek out with Denny, but you know, the thing I was going to say before when he brought up my name was the great thing about him is that, you know, he's got a master's and will really read the papers. And so Denny will geek out so you don't have to, even though I'm really interested in this stuff. So that's a value add.
well, thank you.
I was just wondering if you could talk a little bit about the role of, you know, you're talking about carbs and diet and everything. If you could talk about the difference between complex and simple carbs and, you know, I guess the health benefits of everything. And, you know, also the fact that, you know, some take longer for your body to process and the whole insulin spike and then dip and everything that goes along with simple stuff. And then actually, if you wouldn't mind, I wanted to ask Jenna, how long are your workouts in the morning? Because I do the same thing, but I will go out on black coffee, but I just know that, like Denny was saying before, with there's this like 2-hour time limit for me where I'll bonk if I don't start eating at about that point. So that's it for me.
So yeah, Jenna, when you don't eat and then you go exercise, by the way, yeah, remember that we said about it, yeah, how long do you exercise?
Yeah, so it's going to depend on what I'm doing and who I'm doing it with.
Mm.
If I'm on my own and I'm doing an hour and a half, I'm fine. I can do that even fasting. That's fine. But then when I go out and I train with, I have a group of guys that I train with, and I also have another training partner where I'm going to be challenged to ride at a higher intensity than, and for me, that's more riding for a solid hour and a half at race pace, or going out and doing an endurance ride, you know, of 50, 60 miles plus. I can't go out and do that fasting. So that's where I'm struggling to get enough food in the tank to be able to exert that kind of energy. But if I'm going into the pool, I can typically do a pool workout fasting. My only challenge is hydration, where I'll cramp up towards the end of the workout.
Yeah. Okay. I think you just need to feed on your feed during your long exercises. I mean, it's that simple. And you know, a very helpful, something that helps me when I feed during long efforts is, you're not eating for you, you're eating for future you. You're eating for you half an hour from now. So some of us who got to have that breakfast for future us who's starting the exercise, we do that. You don't have that. So you know, like normally the kind of the standard recommendation for running or you know, as a 100 or yeah, I think it's 60 to 80 grams, 45 minutes, every 45 minutes, something like that, like a gel every 45 minutes. You shouldn't wait until then. You should just bam, like have that gel right there, or that whatever, that Rice Krispie treat or whatever
Well,
you're gonna have.
That's been the learning curve, is not waiting till you feel like you need it, but eating something well in advance so that you don't feel like you need it. That's been a learning curve as well.
Same with hydration, by the way. If you're out doing an activity and you get thirsty, you're burnt. You want to eat and drink before you need it. That's very important. You know, so does that help? I don't know, she went away. Todd, I'm going to, number 5 is about added sugar. So I am going to address what you did, but can I save that for number 5?
Oh, absolutely. Yep.
All right, cool. Thanks for like ruining the final act of my little play here.
Just doing my job, sir.
Now we all know that Darth Vader turns to the good side in the end. So the next one is very important. Truly understand, if you supplement, and you don't have to, but if you do, understand what you put in your body. It's really easy to be told something works and think, oh, this works, or to pick up a powder that has 36 things into it and take it and think you're doing awesome. But I work in the supplement industry and I have for 20 years, and I've sold supplements, and I will tell you, there's a lot of BS, and you don't want that, but it's so simple to get around it simply by being aware of what you're consuming. Yeah, start with this. And honestly, if you don't know what it is, don't consume it. You're going to suddenly a lot of supplements in your life will vanish. But you'll build and grow as you learn about things. And it also gives you an opportunity to see if the thing is actually working. You know, I sometimes will talk to people and they'll be taking 20 subs, and I'm like, you even know those do? And I'm like, no. And okay, you're just supporting the industry, you're not supporting yourself. So that's a good thing. A couple places to look for research. It's called PubMed. The government, all scientific research goes into this database, and it's a really good place. Learning how to read scientific studies is a learning curve, a tough one, I will admit that, but it's well worth learning how to do that. However, there's a really great site called examine.com They have a pay function, but a lot of it's on the free side, and they're really good. And in my opinion, really accurate in breaking down science in accessible ways. And most of the kind of common supplements that athletes use are on the free side. So it's a good place to go. When you are, don't trust unsubstantiated claims. And that goes for a couple of things. If I go to a website, if someone asks me about a supplement and I go to the website and I can't find links to PubMed, links to the studies, I instantly discount it. A supplement needs to put their scientific money where their mouth is. But that also applies to experts. I pride myself in if you read my my newsletter, my Substack, I substantiate everything. If I say a thing, if I say a study said this, or this is how this works, I will link to a credible scientific source. And then that also opens up things like, Harvard and WebMD. They're pretty good too. But just really, it's really easy. It's really easy for people to try to sell you things and say things work and say things you want to hear. And they're just not. They're not right. And it's, because it's a Dr. Oz syndrome. God bless the guy, but you want people to come and see you and like you, and you keep saying things. I hope like Dr. Oz's uncle isn't on this call and he's like, shut up about Dr. Oz. But, and the next thing you know, you're kind of saying stuff that's not true. So that's number 4. Does anyone have any questions about that?
No questions, but we'll make sure that we have links to those as well in the show notes.
All right. And nobody tell Dr. Oz. All right. Finally, try to limit added sugars to hard efforts. I eat added sugars. I'd be lying if I didn't. That's why I say try. It could have been really easy for me to cut off the first 2 words of this. But very few people are going to do that. So that it's a good practice in life to not get too carried away with the added sugars, except when you exercise. And as an endurance athlete, you have an entirely different physiology than most people. When you exercise, your bodies actually forego insulin. The glucose just goes right to fuel. There's the Novo Nordisk cycling team. They're a professional cycling team that is they all have diabetes, and they have a documentary about them that you could look up. It's fascinating. All you need to do is watch it for 5 minutes, and there's a bunch of diabetic guys in the middle of a race, and they're in the tent or they're working, and they're all slurping down Coca-Cola and gels, and you're like, wait, you have type 1 diabetes. Should you be doing that? But their bodies, the moment you start doing this stuff, it starts operating in a different way. So added sugar is good, and it's okay in those moments. So now I'm going to see what else I have here. Oh, yeah, I talked about this earlier, the calories, explaining why you're just trying to get as much fuel in your body as possible when you're doing stuff. So it's okay. Outside of it, now let's address Todd's question. How carbohydrates work. So carbohydrates are basically all a bunch of sugar molecules. Sugar is the thing that your body, it's glucose. It flows through your body. It is your body's preferred fuel source. And both fat and protein, I mean, there's the ketogenic thing. We'll not get into that, but when you're operating in a normal way, or pardon me, in a non-ketogenic way, both protein and fat get turned into glucose. It all becomes sugar at some point. Now, dietary sugar gets progressively more complex. So you have monosaccharides, which are like fructose and dextrose, and they're just one little sugar molecule. They go right in you. You have disaccharides, which are like sucrose is a good example. It's half glucose, half fructose, and it goes into you and then it breaks in half, but it's so simple that it just behaves the same as the simple ones. Your body soaks it up super fast. Then you get into complex carbs, which have lots of different little saccharides, polysaccharides. They get all the saccharides put together. So, and that's where you, in your grains and your vegetables and what have you, that's where you have a lot of those, and you eat them, and they have to be broken down before they go into your system, and therefore that's why, like someone who has kind of metabolic issues can eat that stuff. They're still getting the sugars in their system, but it becomes a slow drip before it goes in. And then, a little side note on that is, really heavily, humans have found a way to ruin polysaccharides by refining them. So when you have like a white bread, it's been so grained and ground and broken down that it just kind of behaves like sugar. So that's why whole grains are better. And another reason whole grains are better is the last kind of carb I'm going to talk about, which is fiber. Fiber is carbohydrates that are so complex that your body can't break them down. So one of two things happens to them, and you've heard of these before, right? You've heard of soluble and insoluble fibers. Soluble fibers, let's do insoluble fibers. Insoluble fibers are they just make you poop. That's all there is to it. They go in, they go through your body, they grab other bad stuff with them, and then you poop. And that's how they work. Soluble fibers, in my opinion, are very interesting because they make it mostly down to your large intestines, where the bacteria there, they can eat them, and they do a few different things. They actually produce nutrients, like certain kinds of fats called short chain fatty acids that you use. They help your immune system. They're very important. So that happens. Also, you produce gas and you fart. So the reason you fart is because you have consumed a lot of fiber, and your body, the bacteria is like working really hard and it's making gas, and there you go. I don't know if this is true. I did have a scientist tell me once that the smell, if you're farting and if it smells kind of fair to middling, you're okay. If you fart and it's just really nasty and sulfur-like, your diet's bad, and that's bad bacteria is making that bad smell. I don't know if that's true, right? I mean, that's now I'm getting into like digestive gossip, but it seemed to make sense at the time. So, and another nice thing about fiber is that it will slow the absorption of the simpler carbohydrates. That is why, for example, fruit is okay. Fruit is okay because, if you have an apple and you peel it, you get rid of a whole bunch of the fiber. Not as great for you. You eat it with the peel. There's fiber in there, there's pectin and stuff, and it slows the sugars in the apple. And similarly, when I was talking about grains being refined or not, the first thing they do when you refine grains is strip out the fiber and the protein, and you just focus on the carbs. But if you have the protein and the fiber in there, the hull and the I think it's the endosperm, you slow the absorption. It's better for you. Also, there's a bunch of nutrients in there, and yada yada yada. So so Todd, I think I nailed it. Did I miss anything?
The one question I had is that I had heard that there is a difference between starches and other complex carbohydrates. So that would be like a difference between potatoes and, say, brown rice or whole wheat.
So I think that's like resistant starches, right? I mean, starch is just a blanket term, and resistant starches are just supposed to be better, not break down as fast. They're just kind of an elevated class because they don't break down as fast. It's not something I'm super well versed in, but I think you're talking about, because starch is a blanket term for complex carbs, whereas resistant starch is supposed to be, like you said, potatoes,
Okay,
those kind of things.
got it.
And so that was me and my speech. That's my Substack. Eventually, I'm going to have just a URL that's npbnutrition.com. Right now, if you go to npbnutrition.com, you go to my business consulting services. If one of you happen to be a business, please go there. But just as a not business, this is probably the best way to go. Subscribe for free, and jump in, or if you there's a paid tier where it has a few little bonus extras, and I'd say you're supporting a starving artist, but I do okay, so you're not really. You're just supporting a guy who talks a lot. And that's it. That was the presentation. I hope everyone's written that down. I'm going to stop share. And
Do you have a question?
I'm going to be argued with now, I hope, or answer questions or learn things, because I know a lot of you guys, and I've just met a lot of you guys, and I'm impressed. So there you go. What you got? Okay, not all at once.
Well, we got
I don't think you're going to get any arguments from me, Denise. I thought it was just a really great presentation, and I appreciate the information that was put out. And I think, I don't know, I'm really bad at nutrition, honestly. And yeah, I just power through a lot of things I probably don't need to. Yeah, I just thought it was really good. So I took a ton of notes, and I'll definitely check out your Substack. I think that perhaps if I paid a little bit better attention to my nutrition, that imagine I would be able to do better at my races. I'm already getting in the top 10, but maybe I could stand on the podium someday for real.
Yeah. Wait, I don't mind. Hope you mind. How old are you?
I'm 48.
Oh,
I probably look a little older. I get that white hair from my mom.
No,
you should have saw me the other day when I had a big white beard. I was look like a deranged Santa Claus.
Yeah, I have the same issue. I've it's Movember, so I have a beard, but I get 10 years younger. I get rid of it. I asked because you're of an age now where it's going to start mattering. You're going to feel it. So it is good to start looking at it now and be ready when that happens.
Yeah, I bonked pretty hard on my last race. It was pretty bad. I to the point where I was had to lay down on the trail for a little bit. I was getting really dizzy and such. But then I made it to the aid station and I recovered. You mentioned pizza. I ate 4 slices of pizza and had some Coca-Cola. Yeah, they had pizza at the aid station. It was the first aid station I've been to in Thailand that had pizza. And I walked up and I was going to take a couple slices, and I just picked up the whole pizza and walked back to the table. And then they had gels. So I threw some gels in my pocket. I feel I put up 3 liters of water because it's hot, it's sunny, I'm sweating I probably drank. I'd estimate I drank 7 to 8 liters of water that day, a ridiculous amount of water. A lot of water. So it just goes right through me. It's just pouring through me. So yeah.
That you didn't have enough water in you?
Yeah, I drink, I try to drink 80 ounces of water per day. I mean, again, I'm not a scientist or anything. I try to just take my body weight, divide it in half, and then drink that in ounces. And I do, so that's 2 hydro flasks a day at least. And then I started the race with 3 liters of water. 2 of those liters, I dumped a bunch of Tailwind nutrition in there. I don't know your opinions on Tailwind. It's a lot of it's supposed to be like what you need all day, and I kind of like it. It's easy on the stomach. And then the thing that kind of messed me up was I didn't realize that at the third aid station, it was only going to be water there and not any nutrition. And so I got to the third aid station, and it was really good water. And I was really appreciative that these people actually hauled water up there. It was spring water, and they brought it up there in these giant plastic bags up on top of this mountain in Thailand for us. And but then so between that aid station and the fourth aid station, I bonked really hard. It was so bad.
Yeah, it's always good to bring your own stuff just to prepare for that.
Yeah, I ate a little bit. I had a little bit of stuff, but it just wasn't. I had like 300 calories with me to go. Like, I think the distance between those two aid stations was something like 15 kilometers, and it was really mountainous and a lot of climbing. I mean, that day I climbed 11,000 feet. So.
Holy crap. All right. Well, I'm glad you're still alive.
Yeah, me too.
Nice. Hey, Todd. Todd has his hand up. Todd, you there?
I'm
You're
here.
muted.
Oh, I was muted. Sorry. I was hoping you could talk a little bit about rot gut and how to avoid it. I had read that or heard from people too, from anecdotal evidence, that they try to start with real food and then later in the long ride, and I'm talking like 4, 5, 6, 8 hour rides, that's toward the end is when they go to the gels and the pure energy stuff. What's your opinion on that?
Yeah, there's actually in the Substack archives, I think there's a little bit of a thing on that. And you can train your gut. Like you can, like those people that just go the whole time on gels, they worked up to that. So that's why I think that when you're training, it's as important to train your gut as it is to train your muscles and your brain. And that's, maybe once a week or, well, no, that's not true. Yes, once a week or once every other week, you can try things like deliberately overloading or eating, like recreate a messed up situation and kind of train your stomach to survive. I've done that. Maybe Jenna, this might help you. I really, I wanted to learn to be able to run on a full stomach. So I started, and when I would go for, not a long run, but like a 10-mile run, or even like a little bit of a faster run, have like a big bowl of cereal, or like a, bread with almond butter on it. Just like a meal that wasn't going to leave my stomach anytime soon, and then go for my run. And there were, at first it was hard. Can't quite tell you how hard it was, but I just adapted, and my stomach was okay with it after a while. So I guess my solution to that would be to train. So if there's a circumstance that messes up your gut, do like the light version of that till it doesn't mess yourself up anymore, and then get more and more and more. Yeah, I mean, when I would have done an ultra marathon by now if I didn't keep injuring myself. I'm pretty good at that. So I've done a few marathons now, and I've got myself where I could just do fine on gels the whole time. That night is kind of disgusting, but it works. So I would say you could train yourself so the short answer is you can train yourself like anything else. I should have just said that one sentence instead of all the stuff.
But there's no like recommended way of, so for example, eating, real food, bananas, little sandwiches or whatever, isn't going to give you longer lasting energy and then you just supplement that toward the end with more sugary stuff.
Well, here's what's interesting. A couple of things. One is, I know culturally, like just plain old marathons it's just all about the synthetic stuff. But I also know that culturally, ultra marathoners eat real food. It's how they work. I do also know that in a marathon, you're in a steady state way of doing things. And please correct me if I'm wrong, guys. I go trail running. I go trail running all the time. Like, you know, that there's the thing where if you can't see the top of a climb, walk it. And then there's power hiking, and you are in circumstances much like cycling, much like dirt cycling and gravel cycling and all that, where you're not gonna go that fast. Therefore, you have those opportunities to have a more kind of intense feeding occasion and it not to mess you up.
I would agree with that. I'd also agree that like real food is something to look forward to. Like, I'm not like, oh, I can't wait to get to the aid station to have another goo, you know, like, well, I want some pizza or a quesadilla or something, you know?
Yeah. I mean, it kind of helps with flavor fatigue and all that. And, you know, who you are. But so I would say that would I think I answered your question. Did I answer your question?
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks.
All right, sure. Okay, got two hands up. I should pick someone, shouldn't I? Let's go ladies first. Jenna.
So before we started, I had told you I do multiple Imodiums before a race. and if it's a long one, they're part of the race. Do you work with anybody who suffers from IBS or intestinal issues? Because I feel like I've tried everything and there's no rhyme or reason to what's going to be a good day on a run. And it can start 1.5 miles in, or I mean, a bad day where it starts 1.5 miles in, or a good day where I can go out and I can run 10 and not have any issues. Do you work with anybody with intestinal issues and help with their nutritional, you know, how to work that out?
I have, in the sense that someone is dealing with it with a medical professional and they give me the parameters that they have to deal with, and then I help them feed within those parameters. But you know, I'm not a doctor. I'm not, so I wouldn't. So yes and no. I mean, what I would recommend if I were, first of all, you probably understand that you just summed up all of endurance sport. You go out for, I don't know why, but before I got here, I just went for a 2-hour bike ride with my wife on the Strand. It's dead flat. There's nothing. It's the easiest bike ride in the world. And I've done it hundreds of times and it was hard. And I'm like, why is this hard? This is the easiest thing, but just you have good days and you have bad days. It's just kind of like that. And then unfortunately you have that extra added gut issue. If I were you, I wouldn't just look at the acute. I wouldn't just look at the training feeding or the event feeding. Like I ate this here, like the day before, and here I would look, you know, days before, days. I would look at everything and try to find some cues in your overall diet that might, you know, set you off. You know, I mean, if I have a lot of dairy the day before a big activity, I struggle. I think it's a lot of a congestion sinus issue, but it's not the day of feeding, it's the day before. So are you doing that? Are you looking at the day before and the day before that?
Yeah, I think it's more along the lines of a runner's colitis is what it is.
Yeah. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
That's
and
not.
So the only recommendation they say is either 1, stop running, or 2, take Imodium. And you
Really?
know, yeah.
And you've tried all kinds of different ways of eating and nothing works.
Aside from stripping the diet completely and reintroducing one thing at a time over time, that's the only thing I haven't done. But I try and stay away from the trigger
elimination
food.
diet yet. Oh,
What's that?
100% do an elimination diet. 100%. I strongly recommend it. Does everyone know what an elimination diet is? Okay, so People have trigger foods. They have foods that may not sit well with them. So it's generally looked at as holistic medicine, but there are scientific ways of doing it. I want to say the University of Wisconsin, not 100% sure, but I think it's them, have a really cool elimination diet that's pretty science backed. It's the University of W something. So if you can't find it, get hold of me and I'll find it for you. But so what you do is these trigger foods like gluten and soy and nuts and dairy and a few other things, you get rid of them all. You have a very boring diet for a certain amount of time, and then you introduce them back one by one to see how you react to them, and you learn what the problem is, because you can't, if you just get rid of one at a time, it's just kind of a mishmash and you don't know if Bill's talking to Jim, talking to Eric, talking to Mike. Whereas if you tell them all to shut up and then talk to them one by one, you get a very clear picture of which one's messing with you. So if you have not done that yet, that would be, yeah, it's really a pain in the ass. It's a giant pain in the ass. Everyone, Todd, Kevin, Nick's had to do it, and it was comical. He didn't like it at all, but he figured out some stuff about his body, so it works pretty well. Yeah, I wish I could be more help. Sounds
No,
like
you just reinforced the fact that I have to do what I didn't want to do.
you have to do the hard thing.
Yeah, thanks.
Yeah, I'm sorry. Dominic?
Hey, so my sport is like long distance hiking, like through hiking out in the backcountry. So I'll be out, I basically carry all of my nutrition for 3 to 5 days in between, resupplying. So the concerns tend to be, the most calorie dense food possible that's also lightweight and non-perishable,
Yes.
which ends up being like a lot of like really highly processed, really crappy food. Like through hikers have the worst diets, I eat ramen noodles almost every night. Do you have any suggestions or foods that you would recommend?
Yes. First of all, when I do long hikes, I will, 3 or 4 days is probably the longest I've gone, but always start with fresh stuff and just eat it. Like that apple's not going to weigh you down so much if you eat it in the first couple of hours, it's no big deal. And I do get weird about food. We went on a big 2-day hike once, and I brought like grapefruit and things. It's like, I don't care if it's heavy, I want it, but I was being an idiot. What's an interesting one that my wife discovered are lupini beans. Lupini beans or lupin beans, sometimes they're called. You get the dehydrated ones, and they rehydrate really easily. And they're really, second to soy, they're like the most of the legumes are the most dependable source of protein. It's a really good solid protein. And then because they're beans, you also get phytonutrients and the carbohydrates and all that. So dehydrated those I would recommend strongly. Yeah, that's a big one. And what else? I don't know, in this day and age, you can get all these amazing dehydrated meals that are actually pretty good. I make my own, with a kind of we'll have like a couscous lupini base, and then the dehydrated vegetables in there, and also dehydrated eggs. You probably experiment with those. Those are a really good one. You can get pretty much anything that you don't really need to eat that crap. I've been with those guys and hung out with the thru hikers on the Pacific Crest trails, but then the funny thing is that they kind of talk out of two sides. They're, I need to be extra light, and then they pull out a bag of M&Ms, and I'm like, how is that extra light? That's not extra light at all. Yeah, and calories where you can get them. So those are a few things I've done that I've had success with. Does that answer your question? Look into the lupini beans; they're pretty neat.
Yeah, that's great. Thank you. And I do carry dried fruit has been
Oh, yeah.
super helpful, or raisinets, actually, chocolate covered or yogurt covered raisins.
Yeah.
Kind of a trick that I learned.
The problem with the chocolate is that if you're doing a particularly hot hike, they get melty, which is kind of frustrating. But yeah, I think that Gorp and trail mix is super good asset. And I also like, if you're getting all those dehydrated meals can be really expensive. But if you just make them yourself, you can get all the components really cheap and in bulk. And because they're dehydrated, they don't go bad. So you get a big 20-pound bag of, dehydrated peppers or something. It's just going to sit in your closet till the end of time. So you can just kind of keep taking them out and mixing them together. And it's a little bit more work, but you get exactly what you want, and you can season it the way you want it. And it's pretty effective. You know what else? I have a friend who is tortillas are your friend. You probably know that already. And what he does is that's pretty cool is he will bring a pouch of tuna fish, and then he'll get the little restaurant packets of mayonnaise and relish, and he'll make himself a tuna salad right there on the spot. So that's pretty cool. And there's a little bit of water weight in that, but it's minimal. And you do all that and you throw it in a burrito, and you have a very light, kind of delicious lunch or dinner. So that's another thing you might want to check out.
Yeah, I carry a lot of tuna packets, the tuna and chicken packets, and they have them in all different flavors now.
Oh, cool.
So, yeah, so my usual dinner on trail is ramen noodles and some sort of flavored tuna packet. And so I get protein and carbs that way.
That's cool. If your diet's super healthy the rest of the time, and then in your trail it's not super healthy, I would argue that what you're doing is so healthy. Otherwise, it's so healthy for you physically and mentally that maybe if your nutrition's taking a hit for a couple of days, who cares? Because you're benefiting yourself in so many other ways. So whatever.
Yeah, thanks. And I definitely do want to learn more about dehydrating my own meals, because I know a lot of hikers who are into that, and it's definitely something I want to learn more about.
Yeah, well, you can dehydrate your own meals, but you can also just buy all the components dehydrated and assemble them yourself. And
that would be easier, because I don't really know how to cook. So
no, that's what I meant. I'm sorry. I meant, we have downstairs we have packets of we have packets of little vegetables that are dehydrated, and we have packets of couscous, because that's just pasta, and then and we have packets of the lupini beans, and then salt and pepper and whatever herbs you want. And we just kind of, that's my wife, she's the master. And thank you, Craig, by the way. Craig's saying bye to everybody. Thank you for coming. She's really, she mixes them all together and makes a thing. We're still experimenting with the dehydrated eggs. We've had some pretty gruesome breakfasts.
Yeah.
We're getting there. So
Hey, Dominic, as somebody who used to have a super overproductive fig tree, if you buy a dehydrator, they're not expensive, and it's really actually very easy to use. And we found that was the only way that we could. And then we ended up making our own fig bars that were amazing, because you can make them yourself with all the ingredients you want and whole wheat flour and all that. But they're cheap and pretty easy to use. So, might be worth a try.
Yeah.
I dehydrate all of mine as well, which are so much more nutritious than the mountain homes. You're not getting all that sodium.
Exactly. Or sulfates and stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
Hey,
it's hard to do, and then you just vacuum seal them.
Jenna had asked about athletic greens when you were talking about supplements, Denny.
Yeah, actually, I was going to mention
about that. Yeah.
Camping. I have so the company I used to work for is called Beachbody, and they have a meal, and it's not meal replacement, a super shake, whatever you want to call it, called Shakeology. And I would get the packets and take those camping with me, and it was a really it's a good thing. I would put them in my oatmeal or whatever, but it's a good way to get those meal replacement type things, and athletic greens, again, not really a meal replacement, but you know, a packet of nutrition that you drink is a good way to get those in there. All that being said, I'm a big fan of water, especially when I'm out in nature, and you know, I'm like filtering water from mountain streams and all that, and the last thing I want to do is dump a bunch of powder in it. But
It's more of a supplement in the morning.
yes,
It's a morning supplement with a scoop of fiber for the gut.
I think it's great if it works for you and you like it. Now, I was talking about camping, by the way. I wasn't talking about, or hiking. I wasn't talking about life, you know, in general. I think athletic greens are great. I marvel at them from a business perspective, because to my knowledge, last time I checked, they only sell one thing, and they're like $1 billion company that sells one thing. And how do you do that? Like even Nike was like, wow, maybe we should make some t-shirts in addition to the shoes. I mean, it's like, it's impressive. So I think it's great if you know, you like that, you want that. There are things to be said for chewing your food. You know, I wouldn't make my whole life like a Jetsons diet where you're drinking everything. And I would make sure that you don't have a mindset of, well, because I'm drinking this, I don't need to eat vegetables, or I don't, you know, need to get fiber elsewhere. It's the word supplement, right? Athletic greens and Huel and Shakeology and I insert whatever here, they are supplements, and they should supplement a good diet. So I think they're fantastic, but there's something you have in addition.
Hey, Denis.
Yeah.
I know the answer to this, but just other than going to New Personal Best, are there some books or some authors that you recommend that have an outlook on nutrition that you admire or respect?
Yeah. My personal hero, like the guy that would turn me into a quivering mass of fanboy, is a guy named Michael Pollan. And he wrote a couple books. Well, he wrote a lot of books, right? And right now he's all into psychedelics. So you can ignore that. That's because that's not for everyone. But before he kind of turned down that road, he wrote a book called The Omnivore's Dilemma and a book called Cooked, that are really hard looks at the way people eat. And they were really important to me, formatively. So, and then with that, I'm going to look at my bookshelf right here and rattle off a few others.
Right. I believe he wrote another one called In the Defense of Food also, didn't he?
Oh yeah, that was a good one. I didn't mention that one though, because it's a little bit harder to chew. See what I did there? Yeah, but it's quite a good one too. Marion, here's one. Hold on, I'm gonna grab a couple and I'll be right back. I'm gonna grab that one. I'm gonna grab this one. I'm gonna grab this one. Yeah, these ones are pretty bulletproof. Oh, and this one. Oh, and these ones. Okay, I'm back. So here's Omnivore's Dilemma. And this, I'm bragging when I show you this that I'm OG, because the new ones have a completely different design. This was the old one when it first came out. This is an amazing book. This is also kind of old. It's called The End of Overeating by David Kessler. And it really explains food addiction. It really explains how companies took salt and fat and sugar and combined them into these hyper palatable foods that people can't not eat. So I found that very fascinating. And, you know, it makes it easier to not eat them when you understand the science and voodoo that's gone into it. This is kind of a nerdy one. This is kind of new. This guy, Herman Pontzer. Again, I kind of have a little bit of a nerd crush on him, and he kind of he explains how calories aren't as black and white as we think they are, and how our body adapts to different calorie levels, and why, like, basically, not endurance athletes, we just burn calories like crazy, but normal exercisers, like 1 or 2 hours a day, your body it realizes that you're exercising that much, and then it starts using calories more efficiently. So that's why, for some reason, you think you're going to lose weight or not gain weight, yet you do, even though you're exercising. And he explains it very well. Now, I do think that Dr. Ponzer is having a moment, and he might be a tiny bit of a headline chaser, but I still think this book is solid and fascinating. Okay, this woman's the best, and I don't know how to say her last name, to be honest. Her name, I believe it's Marion Nestle, might be Nestle. I've read a bunch of her books. I don't really talk to people about her, and when I do, none of us actually know whether it's supposed to be Nestle or Nestle. And I'm not really like a big YouTube watcher, so I've just read her words, never actually heard her talk. What to Eat, it's kind of old, but she explains all this stuff we're talking about and just breaks it down. And she is just, you know what? I would not want to meet her in a nutritionally dark alley and have a Snickers bar in my hand, because she's a badass. And then finally, this guy you don't see a lot in the States. I found this book and I read it, and I tracked this guy down and talked to him for a while. Giles Yeo, and Why Calories Don't Count. Now, if you do get this book, there's this whole big, it's fascinating. It's just how we figured out food and how food works. There's a big part in the middle of it about ATP, about the way we convert food to energy, that's boring as hell. And he admits it. When I talk to him, I'm like, dude, you wrote this amazing book with about 30 of the most boring pages I've ever read. And he's like, yeah, I know they didn't quite work, but I really wanted them in there. So skip those pages. You don't need to know that much about ATP, but the rest of it is really fantastic. And he's really funny. And yeah, and he actually shows up on the BBC and all that all the time. So he's worth tracking down. So there you go. Those are some people that I really respect and admire.
Awesome. Thank you. And if anyone here has Netflix and they're interested in Michael Pollan, he put out a series that goes along with the book, Cooked. So
yeah,
yeah,
it's really cool. Like, it's just really cool. Like, and it's, like, I think he was the one that said, if you want to eat cookies, like if you want to eat cookies, make them. And if you want indulgences, well, he said a couple of things. One is, his big thing is eat food, mostly plants, not too much. That's his motto. But he also pointed out that, like, make the stuff. And if you make the stuff, it takes time and it takes effort, and you're less inclined to eat them all the time, and they're probably better for you. If you make your own cookies, you'd be amazed at how much sugar you can remove from them, and they still taste good. And you put this effort. So, people are waving. Are we sitting?
Yeah, no, some people are punching out.
Okay.
Yeah, and I really like that. I think that's a good way to, and the same thing is, like, in Cooked, like, they're smoking meat and doing all kinds of crazy stuff. And
yeah,
so
yeah, awesome. Well, we're going to make sure that we have all that stuff on there. Does anyone else have any more questions? If not, then we can call tonight, and like I said, we'll have all of the links to this, to include the links to New Personal Best. And I've planted this seed with Denis about having him as a consultant here for CoH, and I'm gonna keep cultivating that and see if we can have some future relationship stuff going on here as well.
Well, this has been fun, and you have all been awesome as usual. Todd asked me a question I can't answer, which simultaneously excites me and pisses me off. And
My job, man. I got to be a gadfly.
You got to keep me honest.
Yeah.
But I mean, everyone. I mean, Dominique's camping, Chris and Jenna, what you do, it's we all have our things we do, and I just love people that have a thing and do their thing, and I hope one day to get a chance to do these things with you, yeah, keep the conversation going.
Love it. Awesome.
Gotta
Thanks
get
for-
out for a ride.
Yeah.
Careful what you ask for.
All right, everybody. Thanks for showing up. This will be up on YouTube probably in the next couple of days. But with that said, everyone enjoy the rest of your weekend, and thanks again.
Great stuff.
Thank you.
Thanks, JT. Thank you
Take
very
care
much.
all.
Bye, everybody.
Thanks, everybody. It's really good. Thanks.